The morning Natalie brought up the baby shower, Daniel understood something before she even finished speaking. He was not invited into the very story of the child everyone believed was his. The kitchen in their Denver suburb was thick with the smell of burnt coffee and scorched toast, a stubborn odor that did not sting but lingered long enough to bother anyone who chose to notice. Daniel Brooks leaned against the sink, still holding a mug of coffee that had gone cold. He heard Natalie's footsteps behind him, slow and familiar, measured with the same careful control she had used since becoming pregnant. Natalie paused in the kitchen doorway. One hand rested on her belly, 7 months along, her posture calm, her face soft enough to make anyone believe their marriage was perfectly fine. People called it pregnancy glow. Daniel knew it was simply excellent self-control. She said the baby shower would be on Saturday at the community clubhouse, small and intimate. Then she added one detail, as if it were an afterthought. Girls only. Daniel did not answer right away. He stared at the wooden table where old scratches had never been repaired. Not because he cared about a party, but because of how she said it. Her voice stayed gentle, yet firm, like a decision rehearsed in advance. He asked who would be there. Natalie listed co-workers, her sister, a few neighbors from the community. Names he recognized. But something obvious was missing. His family was not included, and neither was he. Daniel asked why. Natalie smiled, just enough to end the argument before it began. She said it was tradition, that men ruined the mood, too many questions, too many opinions. The last line stayed with him. Too many questions. Daniel nodded, not because he agreed, but because he knew pushing back would only make him look like a difficult husband, and Natalie was very good at turning other people into the wrong one in their own story. Daniel worked in internal audit for a regional logistics company. Not glamorous, no business card that impressed anyone at parties, but his job revolved around one thing: traces, records, timelines. Things that do not lie unless someone arranges them to. Natalie knew that, and she always dismissed it. She kissed his cheek before leaving for work. A quick and proper touch. Nothing extra, nothing missing. The door closed. The house fell silent in its own particular way, not peaceful, but hollow. Daniel looked at the refrigerator door. Ultrasound photos held by magnets. A baby name list in Natalie's handwriting. Soft curved letters filled with hope. He knew he should have felt excited. Instead, familiar pressure rose behind his forehead. A feeling he had known before. 2 years earlier, Daniel had almost left. Not because he caught a clear affair, not because there were obvious messages, not because there was a dramatic confrontation. It was a work trip when Natalie vanished for 3 days and came back with a story that did not match. Hotel names changed, receipts missing, time shifting every time he asked again. Natalie cried, swore, blamed job stress. Daniel stayed because there was no proof, and because admitting doubt can be harder than living with it. Now she was pregnant, and that feeling returned, sharper, colder. That afternoon, Daniel stopped by the grocery store, an ordinary errand on an ordinary day. He ran into someone he knew from the neighborhood. Small talk moved from the weather to work, then to the baby on the way. The person congratulated him and mentioned the shower. Girls only, right? Natalie told everyone she wanted to keep it private. Daniel nodded on instinct. Then the person added something lightly, as if it meant nothing, that Natalie had looked tense while handing out invitations, kept checking her phone, asked again and again whether Daniel knew about it or not. The comment dropped between them like a pebble, not big, but enough to ripple. That night, Daniel lay beside Natalie, her breathing steady, her hand resting on her belly as if protecting a life the whole world assumed was his. He told himself he was overthinking, that pregnancy changed people. Then his phone vibrated. An unknown number, no greeting, just one sentence. If you want the truth, do not show up at that baby shower. The screen dimmed in Daniel's hand. He did not reply. He did not wake Natalie. He opened his calendar. Saturday, baby shower. Then he added another line. Friday morning, a private lab on the south side of the city. Daniel did not know what he was about to find, but he knew one thing clearly. Whatever Natalie was hiding did not begin with a party, and it would not end there. That message did not make Daniel panic. It made him alert in the coldest way. The next morning passed like any other. Natalie got ready for work and talked about the weather, a long meeting ahead, and the need to buy extra paper towels for the baby shower. Her voice stayed light, smooth, perfect. If a mask existed, this was it. Daniel sat across from her, listened, and nodded at the right moments. He did not ask more questions, not because he lacked curiosity, but because he understood that rushed questions only taught people how to answer better. Natalie left. The door closed. The house returned to its familiar emptiness. Daniel stood in the living room for a long time and noticed small details he used to ignore. A new bag placed beside a chair, an unopened envelope on the table. Not big enough to accuse, but big enough to remember. Daniel was not the kind of man who drew attention. Average looks, a low voice, little expression. At parties, he was often the one standing near the food table, listening more than speaking. People underestimated him because of that. But his work existed because of a simple truth. No one can hide everything forever, only for as long as they can. In an old company file, Daniel once uncovered a family fraud scheme that lasted for years. Not because of one huge piece of evidence, but because of small amounts and timelines off by a few hours. The person involved cried, begged, swore no one was harmed. But when the pieces were placed side by side, the truth appeared on its own. No shouting required. Daniel thought of that file when he realized his own marriage was creating similar gaps. That afternoon he went to a coffee shop near home. Not a habit, but he needed neutral ground, a place without shared memories. He ordered black coffee and sat by the window watching people pass, young families, men carrying children, women laughing into their phones. Daniel wondered what he had missed, or rather, what he had chosen not to see. His phone buzzed. Not the unknown number. It was a message in the neighborhood group chat. Someone had shared a photo of the baby shower decorations. Natalie's name displayed prominently among pastel symbols, and Daniel's name was nowhere. Someone commented that Natalie looked very tense while preparing, that she kept checking her phone, that she kept asking whether Daniel would come. Daniel read it, then read it again. Those casual words did not know they were opening a door. That evening, when Natalie came home, she carried a strange energy, not exactly happiness, more like urgency. She spoke faster, moved more, as if she were running ahead of something. Daniel asked if she was tired. Natalie said no. He asked if she needed help with the baby shower. Natalie said no, everything was already handled. That answer should have reassured him. Instead, it made him uneasy. Night fell. Natalie fell asleep quickly. Daniel lay beside her, eyes open, watching the ceiling darken. He stopped trying to comfort himself. Instead, he began to organize his thoughts. No emotion, no assumptions, only timelines. The old work trip, the short calls, the way Natalie always asked when he would be home, and now a baby shower he was not allowed to attend. Daniel opened his phone. He did not text the unknown number. He did not need to. The sender did not want a reply. They only wanted him not to be there. He opened a familiar app, his work calendar, then switched to something else, a personal list he rarely used. He typed one short line, no emotion, no exclamation. Verify, not confront. He set the phone down and looked at Natalie. Her hand rested on her belly as if guarding something fragile. Daniel realized a simple truth. If a secret was big enough to push him out of the room, it was big enough to destroy everything once exposed. And Daniel, even if no one noticed, was the best person at bringing hidden things into the light. Daniel did not tell anyone he had booked the test. Even to himself, he did not call it suspicion. Friday morning arrived faster than he expected. Denver's sky looked pale gray, not rain, not sun, the kind of uncertain weather that makes a person uneasy. Daniel sat in his car in front of a low office building on the south side of the city. A small sign, beige walls, no big logo, no noisy waiting room. A place that survived on discretion. He stayed in the car for one more minute, not because he was afraid, but because he understood that once he stepped out, he would never return to innocence. He told himself this was a precaution, not an accusation, not a conclusion, just information. That was how his work always began. Inside, a technician greeted him by name. Neutral voice, no curiosity, no judgment. The people here were used to families standing at a line they were afraid to name. His sample was taken quickly. Forms were signed. Pages of legal language, dense but familiar. Lawful access, prior consent already on file. No explanations required. Daniel left with a receipt and a timeline. The results would be ready early next week. He slid the paper into his glove compartment carefully, like storing a blade he did not yet know how he would use. On the drive home, his phone rang. Natalie. Her voice sounded bright. Breath quick with excitement. She asked if he could pick up extra folding chairs. It looked like more guests than expected. Daniel said yes, because saying no would lead to questions. And questions were what he was not ready to answer. That afternoon he worked from home. Emails followed emails. Reports followed reports. Everything ran smoothly, but his mind did not. Every number on his screen pulled him back to another timeline in his private life that he was rebuilding in silence. Natalie came home early. She walked in with too much energy, cheeks flushed, her smile wider than usual. She talked about balloons, games, a surprise gift from someone special. When Daniel asked who, Natalie shook her head. A secret. The word did not sound like excitement. It sounded like a soft warning. That evening, while Natalie showered, Daniel opened his laptop. He did not check their shared account. Too easy, too clean. Instead, he logged into an old savings account Natalie had opened before they married. A habit he never dropped, not out of suspicion, but out of risk control. The transaction list appeared. Small deposits, steady, over months. Then one large withdrawal 2 weeks ago. No note, no reason. Daniel printed the statements. The printer's sound cut through the home office like dry bone. Natalie turned off the water. Daniel folded the pages and placed them into an unmarked envelope. Everything happened so smoothly it chilled him. That night Natalie fell asleep quickly, turning her back to him. Daniel stared at the ceiling while the fan shadow moved slowly. He stopped trying to find explanations for her. Instead, he thought of cases he had handled. Families who believed they could hide a truth if they were patient enough. Plans built on a dangerous assumption that the other person would never verify. Daniel had watched that assumption collapse many times. He opened his phone again. Not messages, call history. He did not read content, only frequency. One number appeared rarely, always short calls, always late at night, and only during the periods Natalie claimed she was traveling for work. Daniel wrote it down. No rush, no conclusion, just placing pieces side by side. The next day was the baby shower, a room full of people, laughter, witnesses. Daniel understood that when he looked at the date on his calendar. It was not a party meant to celebrate. It was a stage built in advance. A realization pressed heavy in his chest. When someone needs many people to witness your absence, that absence becomes evidence. Daniel turned off his phone and looked at Natalie. Her hand rested on her belly, sheltering a life not yet born. She slept peacefully, believing everything was going according to plan. Daniel did not. He still did not know the final truth, but he knew that when it appeared, No one would be able to say he ignored the signs. And when the truth needed to be recorded, Daniel Brooks knew how to make sure it could not be erased. Daniel realized the baby shower did not begin when the balloons went up. It began the moment he decided not to step into that room. Saturday morning, Denver's sky was painfully clear. No clouds, no wind, perfect weather for a family celebration. Daniel drove to the community clubhouse at the exact time Natalie had said. The trunk carried the folding chairs she asked him to buy. A roll just enough to let him appear, but not enough to stay. The parking lot was almost full. Familiar cars. Women stepping out in groups, laughing, holding pastel gift bags. Daniel opened the trunk, lifted the chairs, carried them inside. No one stopped him. No one invited him to remain. Without saying it, everyone understood his part ended there. He set the chairs against the wall, neat and precise, the way he did everything. Then he paused, not leaving right away, simply watching. Sounds drifted from the room. Laughter, whispers, excitement that felt rehearsed. Through the glass, he saw Natalie in the center, a light dress, one hand on her belly, smiling more than usual, smiling as if performing for an invisible audience. Daniel turned away and stepped outside. As he reached his car, he saw her. A woman who arrived alone, no laughter, no small talk, dressed clean and practical, low heels, hair pulled back, eyes sharp and assessing. She did not look like a friend there to celebrate. She looked like someone there to confirm something. She looked at Daniel for a single second, no greeting, no avoidance. Her gaze was not curious. It knew. Daniel got into his seat and gripped the steering wheel. His phone buzzed, the same unknown number. One short line. She is inside now. Daniel did not reply. He started the car and drove out, not fast, not frantic, not looking back. When he reached the main road, he realized his breathing had gone shallow. He drove to a park a few miles away, parked, got out, and walked without a destination. Families enjoyed the morning. Children ran. Adults called names. Normal life moved alongside a staged performance elsewhere. Daniel sat on a bench and watched the children. A feeling rose in him, not envy, but a quiet grief. While everyone else celebrated a beginning, he was standing at the edge of an ending. 2 hours later, he returned home. Natalie came back later, glowing, arms full of gifts. Her voice was higher than usual. She talked about games, cake, how everyone loved the party, how everything was perfect. She hugged Daniel longer than normal, as if needing proof he still existed. Daniel helped her carry boxes into the living room and set them down. Then he noticed one small package placed apart, no wrapping, no card, no sender's name, just a plain box. He did not ask. That night, Natalie fell asleep quickly, her body loosening after a day of playing her role. Daniel sat alone in his home office with the desk lamp low and his computer open. He did not check messages. He did not need to. He opened call history and looked only at frequency. One number appeared, not often, but consistently. Always on nights Natalie traveled for work, always short, always late. Daniel searched it. The name on the screen held him still. Rachel Cole, family law attorney, private practice, not a lover, not a friend. Someone preparing. Daniel leaned back in his chair. Everything arranged itself into a cold order. The baby shower was not meant to celebrate. It was meant to create witnesses, people who could later say Natalie was not hiding, that Daniel did not show, that it all happened naturally. The house stayed quiet. The wall clock ticked. Daniel glanced toward the bedroom. Natalie shifted in sleep, her hand on her belly. A life was growing inside a carefully calculated plan. Daniel did not feel rage. He did not feel panic. He felt a clear, cold certainty. The baby shower had answered him without a single explanation. When someone needs a full room to witness your absence, that absence is no longer accidental. And Daniel Brooks understood that from this moment on, he was no longer outside the story. He was the one holding the file. The phone rang on Monday morning, and a single sentence on the line was enough to end every remaining assumption. The child had no biological link to Daniel. The woman from the lab spoke evenly, professional and emotionless. She read the result the way she would read a number in a report. Probability of paternity was 0. No extra explanation. No gray zone. Daniel said thank you, ended the call, and placed the phone face down on the desk. He sat still for a long time. No shouting, no smashing things. None of the emotional wave people imagine when truth rips open. Only a heavy emptiness spreading in his chest, like a room that loses all its air while everything inside remains standing. Daniel opened his computer. An old folder sat in the corner of the screen, labeled Natalie. He never believed he would need it. Inside were timelines he had once written down and abandoned, receipts, flight records, work trips, small details he had convinced himself were not enough to suspect. Now they formed a single cold line. The baby was not his, which meant what Natalie had done could not have been sudden. Daniel did not go home right away. He went to the office and sat at his desk like any other day. Coworkers greeted him. He nodded. No one noticed anything different. He worked, reviewed reports, answered emails. The ordinary routine kept him upright. At noon, he sent a short email, no emotion, no accusation, only a request to meet, to Rachel Cole. She replied soon, surprised, then cautious. She said she could not discuss a client. Daniel did not argue. He attached files, bank statements, dates, and the DNA report. He did not threaten. He simply asked whether she wanted her name linked to fraud. The meeting happened the next morning. Rachel Cole looked nothing like she had at the baby shower. No careful makeup, no pastel dress, just a tired attorney sitting across from Daniel in a small conference room. She exhaled before speaking, as if she had been waiting for this moment. She told him everything without circling. Natalie was not having a secret affair in the usual sense. She had maintained contact with an old college boyfriend named Aaron, a man with a terminal illness and little time left. He wanted a child before it was too late. Natalie agreed, not out of love, but out of guilt, out of pity, and because she believed she could control the consequences. The plan was simple. The baby would be presented as Daniel's. The marriage would stay stable. The finances would stay stable. Years later, once everything felt safe, she would reveal the truth under the name of honesty. Rachel had been hired to calculate timing, not to file for divorce, but to prepare options in case Daniel asked questions. Daniel listened without interrupting, without reacting. Then Rachel added another detail. Natalie had filed preliminary custody-related paperwork, not official yet, but enough to lay groundwork. The argument focused on Daniel's heavy travel schedule, his quiet personality, his frequent absences, things he once believed were harmless. Daniel remembered those documents clearly. He had helped her fill them out. Something in his chest went colder, not pain, but recognition. This was not only betrayal, it was a structure built long ago, layer by layer, with him standing in the middle and never noticing. Daniel asked one question. Was Aaron definitely the father? Rachel hesitated, then shook her head. Natalie believed so, but the timeline did not completely match. Daniel said nothing else. He stood up, thanked her, and left. That evening he came home earlier than usual. Natalie sat on the sofa, one hand on her belly, the television on but muted. She looked up and a flicker of caution crossed her face. Daniel did not circle. He placed the envelope on the table, the DNA report, the bank statements, the printed emails. Natalie looked and her face drained. She tried to explain, cried, talked about Aaron, illness, compassion, fear of being abandoned. Daniel listened, then shook his head. The timelines do not match Natalie. She froze. Her eyes shifted from pleading to panic. Daniel said he had already checked medical records, travel dates, call logs. Aaron could not be the father. The room fell silent. Natalie whispered that she did not know. But Daniel already knew enough. She knew enough to lie, enough to plan, enough to push him out of that room. Daniel sat down for the first time since the conversation began, not because he was weak, but because the weight of truth demanded it. The baby was not his, and the man behind this was still unseen. But Daniel knew he had nowhere left to hide. The final truth did not arrive in screams. It arrived in a cold room where no one had anywhere left to run. The hospital conference room sat on the 3rd floor. White lights, no windows, nothing to distract. Daniel sat at one end of the table, back straight, hands in front of him, the posture of someone used to disciplinary boards and irreversible decisions. Natalie sat across, eyes swollen, fingers twisting together, tightening and loosening again. She did not look at Daniel. She stared at the tabletop as if the wood could offer an exit. The door opened. Thomas Reed walked in. He paused for half a second at the threshold, one slow breath, enough for Daniel to understand that Thomas knew exactly what he was walking into. A nurse placed a folder on the table. Her voice stayed even, neutral. She said the results were complete. She said the test was final confirmation. Thomas opened his mouth to speak. Daniel raised one hand, not high, not aggressive, simply final. The nurse slid the folder to the center. No percentages, no interpretation, only one clear conclusion. Thomas Reed was the biological father of the child. No one spoke for several seconds. Those seconds felt like a lifetime. Thomas stared at the paper. His lips moved without sound. Natalie closed her eyes. Her shoulders shook. Daniel felt something loosen inside him, not relief, but ending. Thomas said it was a mistake one time at a conference. He said Natalie had reached out. Natalie stood up, losing control for the first time. She said that was not true. She said he knew she was vulnerable. She said he promised it would not affect Daniel. She said he told her it would stay private. Thomas turned to Daniel, eyes mixed with regret and fear. He said he never meant to hurt him. Daniel leaned forward. His voice stayed low and calm. "Did you know she planned to have me sign as the father of this child?" Thomas said nothing. That silence was enough. Daniel stood. He told the nurse he needed copies of everything. He asked her to note clearly that he withdrew all consent connected to his legal association. The nurse nodded, no questions. Thomas said they could handle it quietly. Daniel looked at him. Quiet is how this started. Daniel placed another folder on the table. Emails, approvals, matching schedules, signatures Thomas had made while Daniel was away. Daniel said the internal audit board would receive everything. The hospital ethics committee would too. Thomas's face drained. Natalie asked Daniel what he wanted. Daniel paused for a beat, then spoke. He wanted his name removed from every document. He wanted the truth recorded. No more, no less. The nurse asked whether Daniel wanted to be present for the birth. Natalie looked up, desperation in her eyes. Daniel stayed silent for a few seconds, then said he could not be a husband, he could not be a father, but he would not shame her. No public humiliation. No cheap revenge. Natalie nodded slowly, as if accepting a final sentence. That was the last agreement they would ever share. As they left the room, Thomas reached for Daniel. Daniel stepped away. He said it ended here, not later, not in the shadows. The elevator doors closed. Daniel watched the numbers descend. For the first time in weeks, his hands stopped shaking. The baby came early. Daniel learned through a short email, polite, no request for him to come. Natalie already knew the answer. Daniel forwarded it to his attorney and closed his laptop. 2 days later, he signed the paperwork. His name was removed from the birth certificate, the hospital records, every document that had tied him to a story that was never his. The pen felt heavier than usual, but when he set it down, he felt lighter. Thomas Reed resigned a week later. No announcement, no explanation. People speculated. Daniel did not correct them. Natalie moved to live near her sister. She sent one final message saying she never meant for things to go that far. Daniel read it once, then deleted it. Some stories did not need replies. Time passed. Life settled. Daniel transferred to another department, not because he was pushed out, but because he set a boundary. One afternoon he stood waiting to pick up his niece from school. A man argued with a teacher ahead. A woman laughed into her phone behind. Normal life moved on. Daniel realized something. Walking away was not weakness. Staying in a lie would have been self-destruction. He did not abandon a child. He refused to live inside a story that would poison everyone involved. Truth did not always feel pleasant, but it ended things cleanly. That mattered. His niece ran to him and wrapped small arms around his neck. Daniel smiled for the first time without forcing it. Some people would stay. Some would forgive. There was no single answer for everyone, only the answer you can live with every night. If you were in Daniel's place, what would you do? Would you stay for the child, or would you walk away to keep the truth? Leave your comment with your choice. If this story made you think, tap like. And if you want to keep listening to real-life stories like this, do not forget to subscribe.